Cheeseheads. Get on your feet. It's Curd and Long. Hosted by Sparky, Fifer, and Ryan Horvath.
Welcome in another edition of Curd and Long. Steve Sparky Fifer along with our guy Ryan Wood, Packers beat writer for the Green Bay Press-Gazette. That dude. Follow him on Twitter at @ByRyanWood. Ryan Horvath is off this week, his second week of vacation. It sounds like they all had to take vacation to BetQL before March Madness starts, which makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that's a big time of year for those that gamble. So they want their full lineup ready to go. So he's on vacation again this week. He'll be back next week, back on Curd and Long. Also, a reminder, if you didn't hear, Ryan Wood and I were just talking about it before we came on. We will have the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show after each and every Bucks game the rest of the season through the playoffs with yours truly hosting the show. That starts tonight, Monday, as we record this after Bucks Clippers, and they go on a West Coast trip. But after every game, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody on social media that you can. Let's get this thing up and going again like it was back in the day. So looking forward to that, Ryan Wood. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Aaron Jones and the Green Bay Packers. I recorded a podcast on Saturday when the story kind of came out from Tom Silverstein, your cohort over there, and talking about the fact that Drew Rosenhaus, Aaron Jones' agent, met with the Packers at some point here at the Combine in Indianapolis. Again, this is not unusual or uncommon. Agents and teams meet all the time talking about all kinds of different things, so it's not all that weird. But the way it's laid out is they're trying to figure out a number that would make sense for the Packers going into this season and trying to figure out how to get to the number that the Packers would like to get to. And then they have to see if Drew Rosenhaus and Aaron Jones are going to accommodate them getting to that number one way or the other. First, the question I have for you is, in baseball, and he's a Mets fan, if you don't know, in baseball, we have Scott Boras, who has some egg on his face right now with a couple of players here who we waited out to hold on for forever. And now they're getting like 1-year deals with options and all this other stuff. Is Rosenhaus to that level of Scott Boras jerkdom, I guess I would call it? Because I don't feel like he is. I feel like when he was younger, yes. But I feel as he's gotten older, matured, got a girl, got kids, all of that, I don't feel like he's the same arrogant, condescending, you-know-what, maybe as he used to be back in the day.
I don't know if anyone's Scott Boras in the sports agency world, regardless
in any
of
sport,
league, right?
Yeah.
Like, Scott Boras kind of stands alone. I think in the NFL specifically, so many times it depends on your guy. I mean, if you got Patrick Mahomes, if you got an elite quarterback, you've got more leverage than, say, if you have a running back, no matter who the running back is, even a star running back in the case of Aaron Jones. It's not the same leverage because this league and running backs are on very different pages when it comes to valuation and have been for a couple years now. And I think that any top sports agent, as Drew Rosenhaus is, you don't get to be a top sports agent unless you understand the market. And so he understands where running backs fall in the market. Aaron Jones took a $5 million pay cut last year with Drew Rosenhaus as his agent. His cap hit going into the final year of his contract, his age 30 season, which is maybe not for Aaron Jones because he just finished his age 29 season with the best 5-game stretch of his career. Last 5 games last year are the best 5-game stretch that Aaron Jones has ever had. So maybe, there's clearly more juice left in that tank.
Sure.
And the Packers have been very clear that they want Aaron Jones back. They don't do what they did last season without Aaron Jones down the stretch. They don't get as far as they got. The offense certainly doesn't look the way it did, and they're aware of that. So they want him back, make no bones about it, but he did just take a $5 million pay cut. And, oh, by the way, while he did have the best 5-game stretch of his career, he missed 6 games because of injury, which is usually what an age 29 season running back does. They break down because you take a pounding. It is a brutal position over the long haul, even for a guy like Aaron Jones, who through the history of his career, how many times we said, give the ball to him more. I mean, that's helped with the longevity, the fact that they haven't worn him out early in his career. It's why he still has that juice left going into age 30 season. But you take a pounding and you break down, and he missed 6 games last year. So I don't think there's any question. His cap hit is $17.5 million in 2024. It's $10 million more than it was last year. That's not going to be the cap number for Aaron Jones. But I think that Aaron Jones' side knows that too. Like it's finding compromise and common ground for where, if that is a pay cut, whatever that might be, finding that compromise middle ground and going forward. I think at the end of the day, that's going to get done.
Is it an extension? Is that how it gets done? They add on years to this deal and figure out that way of getting it done? Because if they release him, let's say that's the way they go, now you have pretty much nothing. I mean, Wilson, I guess, but pretty much nothing at running back going into the draft. I think the running back already is a need going into the draft if A.J. Dillon doesn't come back, right? And then if you're Aaron Jones and you look at it from his perspective, where are you going? Now, I think I know where he probably would like to end up. I would imagine go home, play in Dallas. Tony Pollard's a free agent. That would make sense. Jerry Jones talking about he wants to go all in this year and try and win this thing. So maybe there's some leverage there of using Jerry Jones against, the Packers front office of maybe getting a deal done. But Rosenhaus has to have that in his back pocket and for sure to know that Jones ain't, going to pull his chain. And then once we get to that point, it's going to be like, oh, sorry, you got nobody else. Well, I guess I'm only going to pay you this amount of money at the end of the day. This is the big tangled web, I think, that lies in front of us from a Packer perspective and from Aaron Jones' perspective.
I don't know how tangled it is because just as the Packers have made very clear that they want Aaron Jones back, Aaron Jones has made just as clear that he wants to be back. And why wouldn't he? Because he's got a good spot on this offense and on this roster, in this locker room. He is the old head in that locker room. He is revered in that locker room. It's the place that he knows. I think everyone is kind of attracted to familiarity, and there's nothing but familiarity here with Aaron Jones. And oh, by the way, he was right. The Packers have a quarterback, and Aaron Jones was on the forefront last offseason saying Jordan Love is going to be a guy. Just give it time. He's going to be a guy. And there was no one in that locker room once Jordan Love turned the corner last year who you could tell had more glee, just more pride, more joy out of the quarterback situation than Aaron Jones. So why would he want to leave? He doesn't want to leave. The Packers don't want him to leave. And there's a history here. There's a precedent that Aaron Jones is willing to take a pay cut. He just did it $5 million a year ago. If there's that precedent, I have a hard time thinking that he's going to reverse precedent now. His cash this year is $12 million. I don't know where that ranks in running backs terms in 2024 cash, but his average annual salary of this contract that he's in the last year of now is 11.5. That's 6 among running backs. It's not going to end up there. So if there's a precedent to take a pay cut, he wants to be here. The Packers absolutely want him to be here. They're going to get it worked out. I'm not at that place where I'm thinking it's a real scenario, a real tangible possibility that you're going to see him in a different uniform next year. At the end of the day, I would be shocked if this didn't get worked out.
All right, I'm with you. I think Aaron Jones ends up coming back too. We're on the same page there. One way or the other, I think they figure it out. Because like I said, I just think Rosenhaus is going to do what Aaron Jones wants to do. Because again, people forget, everybody gets mad at agents, right? People get pissed off at Scott Boras, or people get mad at Drew Rosenhaus, but they're working for the players. If the player wants to go somewhere, regardless of the contract, and if that agent goes, no, you're fired. I'll go find somebody else. They'll make the deal for me and we'll move on and we'll do it a different way. I think fans forget that. Everybody gets mad at the agent, but at the end of the day, it's the player deciding whether or not he wants to roll with what the agent is suggesting.
And the reality is that Aaron Jones can afford to take a pay cut and still be near the top of the running back market because that's where the running back market is right now. And so for any player, you want to feel valued. You want to feel like you're getting your worth. It's less about the raw cash numbers, although, yeah, that's nice.
It helps.
That's the bottom line. But it's more about where you are in the market. Where's your income? Where's your salary rank among the market at your position? He can take a pay cut and still be near the top of the running back market because running backs aren't making $12 million cash in a year. That's not where the market is. So there's that understanding. Yeah, Aaron Jones wants to be here. The Packers want to be here. Aaron Jones is going to be here.
Let's talk about the other running back who I brought up, A.J. Dillon. I think every Packer fan thinks he's gone. What do you think how do you think this plays out?
Well, let's start with Aaron Jones and what's the best role. I thought it was very telling. Brian Gutekunst at the end of the season said Aaron Jones, when he was healthy and fresh down the stretch, was a difference maker. He was an X factor in that offense. The question, Brian Gutekunst said, is how to keep him healthy and fresh. And that's in your age 30 season as a running back, no matter if you have kind of diminished the mileage over the course of his career, the age is the age. You want to make sure that you're preserving this guy. It's not as a workhorse running back. It's not taking the workhorse load of 20 carries a game. In the Packers' perfect world, they repeat just what they did last season, maybe without 6 games missed with injury, but you keep Aaron Jones fresh throughout the course of the season so that he has good legs in December and January. I remember I asked Aaron Jones late last season where his body felt because of missing the 6 games because of injury. He said it was the best his legs felt since 2019 when he had a pretty good postseason that year too. So it's not just a coincidence. That best 5-game stretch of his career didn't just happen. He did benefit from missing 6 games because he was fresher down the stretch. How do you replicate that again if you're the Packers and Aaron Jones in this offense? He'd be a tremendous running back too. I mean, if you can go get a bell cow right now and keep him fresh and kind of have him be that big play spark plug, that change of pace guy, and know that he's capable of getting 20 carries a game, get 20 touches a game, but you don't have to have it from him because there's another guy. That's the ideal fit for Aaron Jones, knowing that he's going to be good to go down the stretch. When the expectations are different now, right? This Packers offense is in a place where they're a contender again in 2024. So you're thinking important, meaningful late season games, having him ready for that. I don't see A.J. Dillon being able to do that for him. He's A.J. Dillon's not a bad running back. He's an NFL player, but he's very clearly a number 2. So if Aaron Jones also is at a place in his career where the best usage of him is to be a number 2, then you have 2 number 2s in your backfield. You need a number 1. So if I understand it's not the most lauded running back class, but if Brian Gutekunst as high as number 25 in the first round, if there's a guy that he absolutely loves early in this draft that he feels like can take that number 1 role and preserve Aaron Jones and have that true 2-headed monster in the backfield, that's the best way to go. I don't know what that means for A.J. Dillon. Look, if he's back, it's not like he's never fulfilled the promise that you had when he came out of Boston College. You saw those quads, and you're thinking, okay, 2nd-round pick, he's going to be a stud. He's never been a stud. He's never been bad either. He's a guy. He's a professional running back. Bringing him back's not the worst thing, but if you bring A.J. Dillon back and you don't have a true number 1 to preserve Aaron Jones, you're not really accomplishing what you need in that backfield.
Okay, well then, if we're going to use that line of thinking, and I don't disagree with anything you said, then how high are we willing to take a running back in this draft? Because I can't see them signing one in free agency necessarily. So, I mean, unless you're going to tell me it's Derrick Henry, and I don't really want to go down that road. I also don't want to go down the road of I have to have some big physical back like Dillon or Henry or somebody like that to be opposite of Aaron Jones. Give me another younger version of what Aaron Jones is. Let's have 2 of them and let's go. And, like you said, kind of help split the carries a little bit to keep them both fresh. And let's move from there. When I do these mock drafts, and I'm a mock draftaholic, and I've said that many of times, I'm always taking a running back with that 2nd pick in the 2nd round. That's kind of where I've been taking my running back. Now, I don't know if the Packers go that high or not, but if you're saying they need to get that next guy for Jones, who might actually be a 1 to Jones 2 or something along those lines as Jones is getting older, I don't know how long you can wait to draft a running back.
It depends on their board, and we don't know their board. So it's hard to say. I'm with you, Sparky. If they can get just an Aaron Jones 2.0 or maybe an Aaron Jones 1.0, a younger Aaron Jones, and match him with Aaron Jones, makes a lot of sense to me. Now, knowing this team, I would be surprised if they didn't want a bigger back to match with Aaron Jones because it is still Green Bay. And that's just how this team, whether it's Brian Gutekunst, whether it's Ted Thompson, they've always operated that way. So I would be surprised if they didn't continue to operate that way. But if they've got another dynamic spark plug guy that you can go with Aaron Jones with, that seems to make sense. It's logical, right? Like I can see that working out well. So it depends on their board. If they love their board at 25 and they think there's a guy at that position that absolutely fits their need and is a dynamic player, the best player available, you're going to hear that a lot from here to the draft as you do every year. then it wouldn't shock me. There's also a lot of other needs, safety being most among them. I think a franchise left tackle would certainly upgrade this offensive line. They're fine now, but if you can do better than fine, do better than fine, especially when you've got a franchise quarterback. You're right. Slot corner especially. They might need also a perimeter corner. You might need 2 safeties, 2 corners. That whole secondary needs help. They need a linebacker, especially if Devondre Campbell's not back as they transition to this 4-3. There's a lot of other needs here, but if they look at 25 and they say there is a running back here that is the best player available, he fits this need, he preserves Aaron Jones, I don't think that's a bad pick if they're convicted in that. I don't know if they will be. It might be round 2, it might be round 3, but high in the draft, getting their guy, I think is a priority.
Let's talk about some of these holes that they have. Like you mentioned, I think you've hit most of them. I would say linebacker too, if Devondre Campbell isn't kept and brought back. But for me, Gutekunst now has said it twice in press conferences since the end of the year of, well, with all this extra draft capital, we could always trade for a veteran. So immediately when he says that, everybody jumps to, it's going to be a safety. They're going to trade for a veteran safety. Then maybe you draft a rookie and you go that way. That would be the way I would prefer it to be. But that's not to say that maybe they don't trade for a cornerback to play opposite of Jair Alexander. But that would be contradictive a little bit to trading Rasul Douglas when you did. And now you're going to trade a draft pick, maybe higher than the third you got back. Maybe it's a second to go get a different cornerback who better be better than Rasul Douglas if you're going to trade for a corner. I think safety is the way I'd want to play this if I'm going to trade a draft pick at this point. What say you, Ryan Wood?
If there's a guy there that on the market that can be brought in and is available and can absolutely make that impact, then no question. And we know this about Brian Gutekunst. He first and foremost wants to build through the draft. And when you look at this past couple draft classes, why wouldn't he? I mean, he's built the foundation, the core of this new contending team through the draft. And he's had to do that because they've been salary cap held. They've had no choice. But we also know about Brian Gutekunst that, unlike his predecessor, if there's a guy in the market, on the free agent market, that he thinks can make an impact, he's not going to hesitate. He's a player there. So it all depends on how the market shakes out once free agency opens. I don't think Brian Gutekunst will hesitate, especially at safety, where you have to overhaul everything. This experiment that they tried with Darnell Savage since 2019, it just didn't work. And it's been years in the making of knowing that it didn't work. Darnell Savage was never a full-time safety in college. It's not the film that was used for him to be drafted in the first round. It wasn't as a full-time safety. They saw the athleticism. He is still the most athletic guy in their secondary last year. And you saw that in Dallas when he undercuts an in-cut to CeeDee Lamb and takes it in a flash to the opposite end zone. That's what Darnell Savage can do. He is the most athletic guy there, but he's not a full-time safety. And I don't know how many times, from the missed tackles to the inability to track the deep ball on the back end, how many times his play had to tell you he's not a full-time safety. He is best where he was drafted in the first round, which was as predominantly a slot corner. So they have to do something different at the safety position. They have 2 vacancies there when it comes to starters at the safety position. If it's not a great draft class for safety, if you're looking to draft 2, it might be a little thin. So I think that certainly free agency makes, if there's a guy there on the market, it makes a lot of sense for this defense. And I wouldn't expect Brian Gutekunst to hesitate to pull that trigger. But there's a lot of other needs. It's not just safety. As bad as the safety position is in terms of the state on this roster, yeah, they've got to get multiple corners. They got to get what they need is they need a Sam linebacker. I mean, when you look at the 4-3 base, I think they can get through with Isaiah McDuffie, who played for Jeff Hafley. He's acquainted with Jeff Hafley from Boston College. That's kind of your Mike. Quay Walker at the will position on the weak side, letting him play in space, giving him more pass rush opportunities. That makes a lot of sense. They don't have that classic Sam who is 250 plus, 260, that can just take a pounding from tight ends and especially tackles, snap after snap, and slot into that base defense. So they're going to need to find one of those. I think that's a big area of need, with or without Devondre Campbell. It's how everything shakes out.
I want to rewind a little bit and talk about another player who was a lightning rod type guy in this on this team for fans. And that's Jair Alexander, right? He does the whole thing running on coin flip. I'm a captain. Coach just forgot where I was from, blah, blah, blah. And then everything that happens after that. Then there were fans that thought he's gone. There's no way. They're not going to keep him. If he's going to act like this, there's no way Gutekunst is going to keep him. He's out of here. I never thought he was in danger of being out of here. He's just too damn good for the money you're paying him. I can't see it. Now, even though maybe the year wasn't the year that he wanted this year necessarily, what was your takeaway from being around Jair all year long, from the aspect of what fans don't see, as far as what he's like in the locker room, what he's like at practices, how guys look at him? You called Aaron Jones the old head, how kind of everybody kind of looks up to him. What is that presence like for Jair Alexander when it comes to his teammates?
Well, there's what it's like and what the Packers need it to be like, right? And certainly the whole season before the suspension, it was not what the Packers needed to be like. When they traded Rasul Douglas, it was Jair Alexander's room alone for the first time, because Jair Alexander, he was injured in 2021 when they brought in Rasul Douglas as an injury replacement. And from that moment, they shared that room. They were co-leaders in that room. So Rasul Douglas no longer here. He's in Buffalo. And it's Jair Alexander's room solely. And he did not step up and seize that. And there's a lot of, what happened in Carolina before the coin flip ultimately was the last straw that led to the suspension. But there was a lot behind the scenes. You don't just get on one action with a player like that to the place where you have a team-imposed suspension. It was a season long of not communicating, not being the leader that he needed to be. And then he comes back from the suspension. And especially that play he made in Dallas. That's a play that not a lot of corners make. I think it's the best play of Jair Alexander's career. That play is why they're patient with Jair Alexander. Because when you got a guy that can not only shut down half the field, but then on a short field, take the football away, read the quarterback, beat Brandon Cooks on an in cut, and take the ball away. Not a lot of corners can make that type of play. So that I asked Brian Gutekunst after the season, any thought, any consideration to trading Jair Alexander, and he shut me down immediately. Absolutely no thought. And it makes sense because, again, not a lot of corners can do what he does in this league. There's a reason why, and he didn't, even when he was on the field, he didn't have the season last year that Jair Alexander has set a standard for himself. But there's a reason why he is the NFL's highest paid corner. He has that kind of talent, and the Packers are focused on getting him back to what they need him to be instead of what he was in 2023.
Ryan, the other thing is this coaching staff and what Matt LaFleur has decided to do, namely on the defensive side of the ball. He got a lot younger with these coaches. I mean, maybe I'm crazy here, but it just feels like the guys that were kind of older, see ya. And we're going to younger guys, more relatable to players, maybe the new way of teaching players, adding coaches left and right all over the place. And he really kind of redid that side of the ball from a coaching side perspective. Whether or not it'll work, I don't know, but it's definitely something different that he hasn't done in the past.
He overhauled the personality of that defensive staff, and it all comes back to one word: energetic. Everyone on that staff has energy. And if you think about what Matt LaFleur said in terms of scheme on the defensive side, and he's an offensive coach, so it's coming from that perspective. But in his view, any defensive scheme in this league can be picked apart. And there is not a flawless defensive scheme that can withstand what offenses are doing now. And so if that's the case, if there's no perfect scheme, in Matt LaFleur's view, it comes down to attitude. And defenses played with energy. Defenses played with attitude. The best defenses flock to the football. They take the football away. They're stubborn. They refuse to buckle in the red zone. You might get a drive on them. You might move the ball, but they're not letting you in the end zone. They are hellacious on third down. They get after the quarterback, and that really translates to everything else, is being able to disturb, to make the quarterback uncomfortable. That's all attitude-based. There's multiple schemes that can allow for that, but there's only one attitude that can really allow for that. That's playing with your hair on fire, and that's what he wants from this defense, and he's got a coaching staff now that coaches with its hair on fire. Matt LaFleur's hoping that translates to the style of play that you see with this Packers defense, even more than the scheme and the change to the 4-3.
Does anybody benefit more than anybody else on that defense with this scheme change? Does anybody be like, okay, this is the kind of defense that I wanted to play in to begin with, but they run a 3-4 here. Now we get to go to the style defense I want to play, which is a 4-3, because some of these guys are going to put their hand in the dirt, right? I mean, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, you're going to see these guys now with their hand in the dirt. I think they can do it. I'm pretty sure they think they can do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't make the switch. But does anybody benefit more than anybody else, do you think?
You know, the thing with Lucas Van Ness that's really interesting is that he started last season, this transition to outside linebacker, without his hand in the dirt. He was in a 2-point stance. And as the season progressed, around the midway point, he put his hand in the dirt again. And Lucas Van Ness had a really solid, a very promising rookie season. It's kind of like the first-round draft pick that nobody really talked about because we were all focused on Jordan Love, and rightly so. But Lucas Van Ness's rookie season was better than Rashawn Gary's rookie season. And part of that's opportunities, but a lot of that was putting his hand in the ground again. As soon as that change happened midseason, that's when you saw Lucas Van Ness take another level. He looked more comfortable. And so, yeah, he's a guy that's going to play, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3, he's going to play with his hand on the ground on the edge. I think if you're Jeff Hafley, you come in and you're watching cut-ups of the personnel that you're inheriting, the job number one, the first priority is maximizing Quay Walker. Quay Walker is not the football player, has not been the football player that Micah Parsons has been. But when you look at the height, weight, speed, the length, it's almost identical to Micah Parsons. So if you have a guy who in the measurables is almost identical to Micah Parsons, and you have him being predominantly a run defender in the box, a pass coverage guy, and there's not nearly enough pass rushing opportunities on his plate, that's a waste of Quay Walker. Not a lot of guys are built like a Micah Parsons or a Quay Walker. He's a dynamic type of athlete, especially at his size and speed. So job number one from Jeff Hafley is how do you maximize that? Well, move him to the weak side in a 4-3 defense. Let him play in space. Let him not have that tight end there. Let him have a more unfettered lane to get after the quarterback, more pass rush opportunities, and let him do what he does best, which even last year in limited sample size was getting after the passer. He can be dynamic there. And when you have your best players, your most talented players playing at their best, maximizing what their potential is, that's how you maximize what your defense is. And it starts to me with Quay Walker.
Totally agree on the Quay Walker assessment. Right there with you. But as far as underutilizing and so forth, I have no qualms with that statement whatsoever. All right, let's talk about another player that I was pissed off about going back to training camp last year. And I was hot because my point on all during training camp was there is one position and one position only that has no competition. And they did it on purpose to protect Bisaccia's guy, Anders Carlson. No competition. Now the season ends and he screwed it up. And again, not surprised because you saw it all through the season. But in my opinion, Gutekunst didn't care about the kicker position because he didn't think they were going to win either. So then when they started winning, and then it gets brought up at the end, and I don't know who brought it up. Somebody brought up, hey, have you thought about bringing in a veteran kicker for the playoffs? Oh, no. We're going to ride with them. I was just shaking my head. I was like, that was a great question, and you should, and you're not going to because you're stubborn, and that's fine. And then the season ends, and it's, we believe in competition at every position. Just lying. You didn't last year in training camp. Now he stinks, and now you believe in competition again to have somebody come in here and challenge him. I think there are a lot of people that think he gets the job no matter what happens in training camp next year as well. Do you think that job is probably his regardless?
No, I think there's a competition now. And what's when you look at what the Packers did in the first week of their offseason, there's three things that they did. Change defensive coordinators, change strength and conditioning coordinator, and bring in a new kicker. And I'm not saying that the kicking competition now is exactly what it's going to look like in August, but I do think that the message was sent that every day from now until the end of August, there is going to be a competition, Anders Carlson, if you are to win your job for a second year. Because at the end of the day, you look at last offseason, it was I think it's hard in hindsight to use that against Brian Gutekunst. They're going into an uncertain time in 2023. They didn't know what Jordan Love was going to be. They hadn't seen enough. And without knowing what Jordan Love's going to be, you don't know what your team's going to be because it's a quarterback league, it's a quarterback game. It turned out that Jordan Love was a franchise quarterback, but they didn't know that last March. They didn't know it last April. There was a lot on Brian Gutekunst's plate to ensure, and really the focus was getting Jordan Love's career as a starter up off the ground. And he accomplished a lot of that. You look at receiver, tight end, the skill positions on offense, what he was able to do there to surround Jordan Love with tremendous talent. That went a long way, especially in the midseason turnaround that you saw offensively and for this quarterback, having that kind of talent around. He wasn't able to get everything done in one offseason. And we knew as soon as the draft ended, two things. One, they don't have safeties. We knew that. They weren't able to get to it. Would you rather have a Brian Branch or would you rather have a Jaden Reed in the second round last season? I can't kill Brian Gutekunst for choosing a Jaden Reed instead of a DB because Jaden Reed's a stud, and that helps your quarterback. But, yeah, it turns out that they were a contender last year, and they didn't have the safeties to hold up. And the second thing we knew is that this was going to be a risk going for Mason Crosby, who for years, over a decade, was a pillar of stability at that position that can be very unstable in this league, to a rookie kicker. We knew that was a risk. But if you're going to take a risk there at that position, it's a good time to do that when you're going into a rebuild, which is what it looked like a year ago. You didn't think that they were going to be within a missed field goal in San Francisco in the divisional round of maybe getting to a conference championship game. This was a rebuild. Take that risk then. And by the time they realized, oh, boy, they overshot expectations. Jordan Love already is so much more than anyone would have expected him to be. Brian Gutekunst looked at the market, and there wasn't a better option late in the season on the market. So to not nuke his rookie kicker's confidence, trying to salvage his career in a year that he missed more kicks, 13 kicks than any kicker in the NFL, not by a little. And there's only one other kicker in the NFL that had double-digit missed kicks last season. It was Chad Ryland in New England. It was that bad for Anders Carlson. You're hanging on by a thread, and you have some talent. I can understand why he didn't bring in a lesser veteran, in his opinion, to compete with Anders Carlson down the stretch. Now it's different because now you know you're a contender. You know that you have a Super Bowl aspiration that's legitimate. And for Anders Carlson to win that job again, he is going to have to prove it.
I got one last one for you here. Thanks so much for coming on, Kurt and Long. Appreciate it. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Wood. Eventually, he's just going to have tweets of all the different awards he keeps winning. It's just going to be a thread of all these different awards he keeps winning. And he deserves all of them. So it's been awesome to watch him have all this success. I want to know what you think the NFL Combine really means to front offices and coaching staffs, because clearly some coaches, whatever. LaFleur didn't go. McVay didn't go. Shanahan didn't go. I mean, so some of these dudes are like, I can get more stuff done if I don't go there versus if I just stay back here and do stuff. And LaFleur didn't go last year either. Meanwhile, the GMs, they all have to go. So all the GMs are there. Now there's talk about possibly moving the combine out of Indianapolis. There's talk about, will there be a combine? What will it look like in the future? So I think there's some second guessing going on now as well, because you still have pro days. So all the numbers, if you want numbers, you can still get at all these athlete pro days, which all these front offices end up going to anyways at the end of the day. However, for draftniks like me, who are obsessed about the NFL draft and have been since a young age, I love the NFL Combine. I used to do my show down there. So I'm all about it. But I just feel like we all get worked up and overreact to things, maybe more so than these teams do, who probably rely more on tape than they do the actual numbers.
The Combine's an introduction. You know, it's the first step in a marathon process that gets crunched down to 2 months. But like you said, the private workouts, the pro days, all those things matter. And so does, you know, when the Packers drafted Jordan Love and they traded up to get him, Matt LaFleur was on the phone with David Yost multiple times, his offensive coordinator in college, asking about the character, the makeup, the mentality, all these things. Secondary sources, as we call it in the newspaper industry. You're writing a takeout on someone. You're not just talking to the guy that you're writing the takeout on. You're talking to secondary sources. The info gleaned from that is awfully important too. All these things go into it, but the Combine's the first, you know, it's the introduction. The Senior Bowl kind of is the prelude to that. But I think what's really interesting now that we have a sample size on Brian Gutekunst's draft blueprint, especially in the first round, what do we know about him? He loves guys that test well, and he loves guys that test well at premium positions. You look at the first round picks that he's made. Each of those guys, Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary, Eric Stokes, when he was before injuries kind of derailed his career. Quay Walker, not the one guy not at a premium position, but he was drafted as an inside linebacker to change the face of how they play defense. Now you can have a nickel defense with 2 inside linebackers on the second level instead of kind of that hybrid safety guy. You can stop the run from nickel. That was a premium pick, even if it was an inside linebacker, all the way to Lucas Van Ness, Devontae Wyatt. All these guys tested very well, and they were all at premium positions. So there's no question that Brian Gutekunst pays attention to those numbers. He wants freak athletes that play a corner, an interior pass rusher, an edge pass rusher, a quarterback, those type of players. So, yeah, I think he pays a lot of attention to what happens in combine as he does everything else.
That RAS score, that athletic total that they come up with, 9 out of 10 times, those guys are all over 9s and on a scale of 10, right? 0 to 10. Very rarely do you see him. And I don't know how many times he's actually even done it. Take a guy that's got like a 3 RAS score or something like that. So he definitely believes in the athletic ability and all the raw numbers as well. He is Ryan Wood. Follow him on Twitter at @ByRyanWood. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Thanks for tuning into another edition of Curd and Long. Download it on your Odyssey app or if you download your favorite podcast app. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell for notifications. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Toodles.